So since the beginning of the week, we have been selling the XAUUSD actually. So let's run through how the week started for us on this pair. So at the beginning of the week, we acknowledged the fact that price action has been bearish in this market. And one thing we saw here from a technical standpoint was the fact that price action had continued to find lower lows and lower highs. And we took a step further by acknowledging that, connecting the lower highs and the lower lows to give us this simple descending channel you can see on your screen. And on this basis was what our decision was made on Monday morning. Now, so let's zoom into what happened at the beginning of the week actually. So we saw how price action started the week on a bullish note, as we saw price started at around the $2,008 level, which is right here, and we saw it climb to as far as our key level for the week, which is at the $2,020 area. Remember, at the beginning of the week, I told us all that we are only going to be buying the XAUUSD if we do have a breakout retest of that structure. And the reason why I said this is simply because of the long-term bearish momentum here, and coupled with the fact that we have a descending channel, and we had the resistant line of that descending channel sharing a confluence with that $2,020 level. So we needed price action to break out. First of all, not only just break out of that structure, we want to wait for a retest to confirm that buyers have found a platform upon which they could ride the move all the way to the upside, which unfortunately for the bulls, this never happened. And one thing we also used to guide our trading activity at the beginning of the week was this trend line you see here. So we acknowledged a price was finding higher lows but yet to find a higher high, and we said if price action breaches this trend line, then at this point we want to be thinking of selling the XAUUSD. And this was exactly what we saw during the early hours of Tuesday morning. We saw price break down the trend line, retest of structure, and if you recall vividly, we identified the $20.14 level, sorry, $2014.50 level as an area where we are going to be looking out for selling opportunities. And we had a sell stop order below that structure, and since then price action had continued to find lower lows and lower highs. And as you can see here, since Tuesday morning, we have seen price action move over 370 pips in that direction. And don't forget that we also had multiple entries in this market, as we saw structures like the $2,000 level broken. We also saw structure like the $2,008 broken to the downside, giving us more opportunities. Then we also saw the breakdown of the 1,986 yesterday, giving us another privilege to be part of the bearish move to the downside. Then earlier on this morning, we also saw the breakdown of the 1,980, which was also acknowledged during our live session yesterday, that we shall be using it to look out for more selling opportunity in this market. And one thing we have seen so far, price has been very bearish. And for those who are still in a sell position in this trade, my advice right now is that you want to be securing the current sell position. And the most appropriate area to secure that position is just exactly around that $1,980 level, which we have identified here. So that is where we are going to be securing the position. So with the position secured right now, that is, if you still have a sell position running right now, after securing this position, now let's see what we are going to be looking out for today. Now, the first thing I would like to say here is that the idea of trading the XAUUSD today falls exactly around the support line of that descending channel. So look at the descending channel here, and then look at the support line of that descending channel. You can see that this is where price action had been in the last 48 hours in this market. And look at what we have here. So since that's the descending channel here, and this is where price action had been in the last 48 hours. So you can see finding a choppy situation around that area where you would agree with me now that we are at a very critical point. Now, whenever we are along a support line, what do you think is going to happen? Of course, we expect buying pressures to come in from that area. Anything could happen. Look at what happened from a support line. We saw buy pressure. That is what we expect from a support line. We saw buy pressure here. We saw buy pressure here again at the beginning of last week. So it's very possible that buy pressure could come in, and buyers have been trying to push price to the upside here, but it has been failing at every point in time. And what this simply tells us is that sellers are still very, very strong, and the likelihood of a breakdown of the support line gets stronger by the day. So let's first of all look at the potentials of the sellers here. Obviously, this is a very long-term bearish momentum, so we want to see how we are going to be taking advantage of a selling opportunity. And mind you, we are also going to take into consideration the potentials of the buyers too in this market. And in order to do this, I was able to spot a simple setup that we can actually use to guide our trading activity for today on a much more lower time frame. So in that regard, we shall be scaling down into a much more lower time frame. So I had to spot this on a very clean chart so that things might not look clumsy in this while trying to monitor price action. So this was what I saw here. So I zoomed in and considered what has been happening since the beginning of today. So that is what I'm using right now. And when I looked at the structure closely, this was what I was able to come up with. And the first thing I did here was to bring out my line chart, acknowledge this trend line, and the look of things right now, the trend line appears to not be capturing most of the pivot eyes here. So I have to redraw the trend line, and I think this is what we are having right now. Okay, so I'll delete this one. So this is the new trend line we are going to be using. So whatever we have on this 15 minutes time frame is what we are going to be using to guide our trading activity for today. So if you'd mind, you can screenshot my screen so that you can use it as a reference point when you're about to make your individual decision. So we saw since the beginning of today, price has been finding lower lows and lower highs, a very uniform one for that matter. As you can see, every time price tests the trend line, it pushes price to the downside. And besides the trend line here is a simple flat channel I was able to spot between the 1,978 and the $1,973.50 level, which you can see it's a consolidation phase around that area. And one interesting thing about that resistance line at the 1,978 is the fact that it shares a confluence with that bearish trend line. So for me to buy, let's talk about the buy potential in this market first of all. For me to buy this one, I would want to see price action break out of the 1,978. Remember, we are not getting too excited here. After the breakout happens, we scale down to our lower time frame. Then we look out for price action coming back to retest the structure, where we start seeing buy pressure resume. Then we can be part of a bullish momentum to the upside. So you could see if a breakout of the 1,978 happens, retest of structure, the trend line here also would have been broken, hereby giving us a sign that it's no longer strong enough to resist the buy pressure in this market. Then we could ride the move all the way to the upside. So buying the XAUUSD from this current structure is just right above the 1,978. Then you could have your stop loss somewhere just right close to the 1,973, which is about 35 to 40 pips stop loss on that one. So with that being cleared out right now, the next buyers on this one is the bearish expectation in this market. And one thing here is that, considering the fact that it has been a very strong bearish momentum, we already have a support line here. So this is the lowest point price action has gotten to this week. That is the $1,973.50 level. And at this point, I want to see price action take out the buy positions along the $1,973.50 level for me to confirm that sellers are going to push this price further to the downside. So what I'm looking forward to here is a breakdown of the 1,973 to be part of a bearish move. And if a retest happens, we want to be adding more position to our existing trade, and the trend line here is going to be serving as our yardstick to guide our trading activity today. So price action could still retest and come into the trend line before another wave of bearish momentum happen. So at this point, we are having a sell stop order below the $1,973.50 level to capture that bearish move if it so happens. Then we have our stop loss somewhere just right around the 1,978, which will be dovetailing to about 35 to 40 pips thereabout. So anywhere above the resistance line seems most appropriate to place a stop loss for the XAUUSD sell buyers in this market. So that is that on the XAUUSD for today. So screenshot my screen so that you can use it as a guide as we prepare for the New York session. It's a very simple setup here that we could easily take advantage of on this one. So that is that on the XAUUSD. So I will be moving on. If you have questions, don't let me know in the comment section.